Hey, ladies. Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
And look at what there it is.
I'm sorry.
11. Hi, Kyla.
And then Mary Kay and Ricky are right over there. I can find them.
November 13th, 2024, started like any other quiet night at Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. The large prison, which houses nearly 4,000 inmates, had settled into its usual quiet rhythm, as most prisoners and staff went about their normal routines. But at 2 a.m., that peace was broken by an urgent call from one of the prison's family visiting units, small private apartment-like spaces where some inmates are allowed overnight visits with their spouses. The call came from inmate David Brinson, a 54-year-old man serving 4 life sentences. His voice was calm even though the situation was serious. He told the staff that his wife had passed out during their visit. Officers rushed to the unit and found 62-year-old Stephanie Diane Brinson not moving. They immediately started life-saving efforts and called for medical help. But despite their quick response, Stephanie was pronounced dead at 2:51 a.m., less than an hour after the call. At first, it looked like a tragic medical emergency. But months later, it was revealed to be something much darker. The Amador County coroner found that Stephanie didn't just pass out. She had been strangled to death inside a place that was supposed to support family visits and second chances. But who was Stephanie Dowls Brinson, and how did she end up spending her final moments in a prison visiting unit with a man convicted of mass murder? Stephanie, who was known as Stevie by friends and family, was full of energy and warmth. Even at 62, she had a big smile, a stylish look, and the confidence of someone who had worked hard and built a good life. She had graduated from the University of Southern California with a degree in special education and held many impressive jobs. She worked as a law firm office manager, dental office manager, Mary Kay director and bookkeeper before becoming a hairstylist. Her salon Hair Elite in Los Angeles was more than just a job, it was a special place. Famous for its Brazilian blowouts, kind staff and friendly vibe, it was a reflection of Stephanie's personality, kind, welcoming, and focused on helping people feel good. She was successful and well-liked in her community. She was beautiful, full of energy, athletic and proud to be a mother and grandmother. Her mother, Etta Wilson, sometimes called Ovita in reports, said after Stephanie's death, "She had one of the kindest hearts." Stephanie was born to Jamaican parents, and her roots gave her a deep love for family and traditions. She raised 2 sons, including Armand Torres, and loved spending time with her 6 grandchildren. Her weekends were often filled with family get-togethers, outings, and celebrations. In videos she posted online, she often talked about her faith and how important her family was to her. "Stevie was the one who held our family together," her relatives said, which made her death even more heartbreaking. Outside of work and family, Stephanie stayed active. She shared videos of her fitness journey and healthy lifestyle. In one video, she happily talked about losing weight and getting healthier, showing her usual high energy. Faith was a big part of her life. In one powerful video from 2017, Stephanie spoke about forgiveness, healing, and her talks with God during morning runs. "I've been praying for about 45-50 days now," she said, explaining that God told her to fall in love with Jesus and let go of anger towards someone she didn't like. "I think that if we fall in love with Jesus, really fall in love, our worst enemies can't hurt us," she said, her eyes full of emotion. "I've seen people who forgave the person who killed their child and even prayed for them. That's the level we have to reach." Those words would later take on a sad, new meaning. Her belief in forgiveness and second chances ended up putting her in danger. Behind the happy life she showed on social media, filled with family, success, and faith, was a shocking decision that changed her life. Around 2019, Stephanie, a smart, successful woman, began writing letters to David Brinson, a man found guilty of killing 4 people during a robbery in 1990. Despite warnings from her loved ones, Stephanie didn't just write to Brinson. She married him. A woman who had built a happy life surrounded by people who cared about her was now spending private time inside a prison with a man who had taken lives. Her son, Armand Torres, told reporters his mum believed they would read the Bible together and that she wanted Brinson to become a better person. Friends and family were shocked. They watched as Stephanie, despite her wisdom, became part of a common prison story, an inmate pretending to be changed, full of faith and regret, only to take advantage of someone's trust. How could someone with so much to live for make such a dangerous choice? What did Brinson promise or say that made her believe she was safe? The reasons Stephanie trusted him, her hope, her loneliness, and her faith, turned into the same things that led to her death. As the emergency vehicles left Mule Creek State Prison early that morning, no one thought anything suspicious had happened. It would take 4 long months before the truth came out. By that time, Stephanie had already been buried, and her family thought she had died from natural causes while spending time with her husband. When the truth finally came out, it broke their hearts all over again and raised serious questions. Why was a man convicted of 4 murders allowed to be alone with a woman who believed in second chances? While Stephanie Dowls was building a successful and connected life in Los Angeles, David Brinson had already sealed his fate with a crime so violent it shocked even the most experienced detectives. In 1990, Brinson broke into the Los Angeles, home of 59-year-old Robert Marks. He believed Marks was a big-time drug dealer with large amounts of money and drugs. But Brinson was wrong. There were no drugs, no piles of cash, nothing of value. What could have ended as a failed robbery turned into one of the coldest mass murders in the city's history. Court records revealed the horrifying details. Brinson, angry that he found nothing valuable, ordered Marks, his 28-year-old roommate G. McCullers, and 2 guests, 33-year-old Saladino Lias and 27-year-old William Terry, to lie face down on the floor. Then, one by one, he shot each of them in the back of the head. 4 lives taken, 4 families left in pieces, and all for almost nothing. This wasn't a crime done in the heat of the moment. It showed planning, coldness, and no care for human life. During his 1993 trial, Brinson showed no emotion, even as the victims' families spoke about their pain. In 1994, the jury found him guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder. He avoided the death penalty, but was given 4 life sentences with no chance of parole plus 20 more years. The message was clear. He would never be free again. From the Los Angeles County Jail, Brinson was moved to Mule Creek State Prison in February 1994. This medium-security prison in Ione, California, would be his home for the next 30 years, while the world outside changed with the internet, smartphones, and social media. So how does a man serving life for such horrible crimes connect with a woman on the outside and even marry her? The answer shows how prison communication can be used to manipulate people. California prisons allow inmates to stay in touch with the outside world in different ways. Monitored phone calls, letters, and sometimes even limited internet through approved channels. Inmates can use these tools to start relationships. Some even have friends or family run social media accounts for them. For Brinson, now in his 50s, these ways of reaching out helped him connect with Stephanie around 2018 or 2019, whether it was through a prison pen pal program, someone they both knew, or posts on social media. He found in Stephanie something rare, someone who believed people could change. Their messages quickly became more personal. Brinson's letters to her in Los Angeles told a story of a changed man who had found faith and was asking for forgiveness. Phone calls helped him strengthen the bond. He could speak to her directly, share his thoughts, and respond to her worries. With each call, he made his new image stronger. Inmates across the country talk about how to get someone from the outside to care for them. They study people's social media pages to learn what they care about, then try to act like they believe the same things. For women like Stephanie, who had strong faith, a man saying he had found God could be very convincing. Brinson likely saw her spiritual posts and used that to connect with her deeply. She liked this guy and she trusted him, a family member said later, and sadly, that's what got her killed. Even though her family was very worried, Stephanie married Brinson around 2019, about 5 years before she died. The wedding was held inside the prison. Stephanie wore a simple dress. Brinson wore his prison clothes. There was no party or honeymoon, just a quick ceremony watched by prison officers. Being married to a prisoner gave Stephanie access to one special thing, California's family visiting program, also known as conjugal visits. These visits let married inmates and their spouses spend 30 to 40 hours together in a private space on prison grounds. Even though Brinson had murdered 4 people and was never getting out, his behavior in prison was good enough to allow these visits. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, some inmates aren't allowed. Family visits, like those on death row sex offenders or those being punished, but having multiple murder convictions doesn't automatically disqualify someone. The system focuses on giving inmates a chance to stay connected to family. But in Brinson's case, with no chance of release, what kind of change was even possible? As B. Stephanie started visiting Brinson more often. Her family grew more afraid. They pointed out his terrible crimes, questioned how a man like that could ever truly change, and begged her to leave the relationship. With everything we knew about this guy, her son Armand Torres said later, we just didn't understand how they could be alone together. But Stephanie believed Brinson had changed. She told her family they spent time reading the Bible during visits, and that she was helping him become a better person. Every visit that ended calmly made her feel more sure that he had truly changed. Over time, she stopped listening to her family's concerns. Their family get-togethers became tense, often ending in arguments about Brinson. Slowly, Stephanie began pulling away from the people trying to protect her. Like many people who are being emotionally controlled, she started to depend more on the person who was actually the biggest risk to her safety. The same man who had once ordered 4 men to lie on the floor before shooting them in cold blood now had hours of private time with a woman who believed she could save him. Everything was in place for a tragedy. By all accounts, Stephanie Dowls was not some naive woman caught up in a fantasy about prison love. At 62, with a successful business, a loving family, and years of life experience, she didn't fit the usual image of someone who falls for a man behind bars. Her choice to not only write to David Brinson, but to marry him surprised everyone who knew her. What could make a smart, accomplished woman tie her life to a man who would never leave prison? Stephanie's deep faith taught her that anyone could change if they turned to God. When Brinson said he was seeking forgiveness, reading the Bible, and feeling sorry for what he had done, he connected with something at the heart of what Stephanie believed. Her son Armand explained it clearly. She was pushing him to try to be this better person. To Stephanie, this wasn't just about finding love. It felt like a mission from God. Helping someone who had been forgotten by society gave her purpose. When they read the Bible together during visits, it strengthened her belief that their bond was spiritual and real. But what Stephanie didn't realize is something prison experts often talk about: how many inmates fake religious change to get close to people outside. By copying her beliefs and pretending to be a new man, Brinson built a strong emotional connection that made Stephanie forget how dangerous he truly was. As their relationship continued, Stephanie started changing too. Friends noticed she lost weight, started dressing differently, and paid more attention to her looks. On Facebook, she began posting more about health and fitness. In one video recorded in her truck, she smiled and said, "I feel so good, I feel so healthy. I've lost, a lot of weight, but I feel incredible." Was she doing this for herself, or to impress Brinson during their visits? Some who knew her believed it was the latter. After her death, one person sadly commented that she was glowing up for her prison boyfriend. The California prison system's family visit program gave them the chance to move their relationship beyond letters and phone calls. These visits were created to help married couples stay close and support each other's growth. They allowed couples to spend 30 to 40 hours together in private rooms on prison grounds. These rooms look like small studio apartments. They have a small living space, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom. Visitors can bring food to cook meals together, so it feels almost like normal home life, even if it's happening inside prison walls. For inmates with long sentences, it's one of the only chances to enjoy privacy and normal moments. But that privacy also comes with risks. According to the prison rules, inmates must check in for a head count 4 times every 24 hours, and prison officers can stop by unexpectedly. Still, the rule book also says, every effort is made to ensure the inmate's privacy. Most couples use that privacy to reconnect. But for someone like Brinson, someone who had already shown he could kill without mercy, those unsupervised hours were dangerous. When people come for family visits, they must leave their phones and other belongings behind. Stephanie followed this rule too. Her son, Armin, later spoke out about this. No supervision, no phones. They take her phone, they take all her belongings. So what hope does she have? Her life is in his hands at that point, he said. Before the visit that ended her life, Stephanie had already seen Brinson several times without any problems. Each time she returned safely, it made her believe even more that he had truly changed. Every visit felt like proof that her family was just worrying too much. But Stephanie didn't understand one important truth. Brinson had nothing to lose. He was serving 4 life sentences, and no matter how well he behaved, he was never getting out. That meant he had no real reason to keep up the act forever. It wasn't a matter of if he would show his true self, but when. As Stephanie grew closer to Brinson, she also grew more distant from her family. When her loved ones questioned her decision to marry a man convicted of 4 murders, she got defensive. Sometimes she ended the conversations early or avoided the topic completely. This behavior matched something experts call isolation. It's when someone in a toxic or dangerous relationship slowly cuts themselves off from people who care about them. Brinson might have been stuck in prison, but his control over Stephanie became stronger, and her support system weaker. On social media, Stephanie shared only the good parts of her prison relationship. Her posts never showed the cold visiting rooms, the long searches, or the constant presence of guards. Instead, she posted about faith, love, and the idea that true connection could overcome anything. She wasn't alone in this. Many people romanticize love with inmates. TV shows, books, and movies have made stories about misunderstood prisoners and women who change them look sweet or exciting. But these stories rarely mention the real risks, especially when the inmate has a violent past. Prison relationships take place in a world that isn't real. The inmate is only seen during carefully planned visits. There's no way to see how they act during daily stress, arguments, or boring moments. What they show on the phone or in letters might be far from who they really are. For Stephanie, the dream of helping someone change blinded her to the truth. The man she thought she knew, through calls, letters, and supervised visits, was just playing a role. The real David Brinson, the one who once murdered 4 men without emotion, had been hiding behind a mask the whole time. November 13th, 2024, probably started like many of Stephanie's past visits to Mule Creek State Prison. The prison, located in the small town of Ione, about 40 miles southeast of Sacramento, has a strict visitor check-in process. They check IDs, enforce dress codes, and search belongings, steps meant to stop anything illegal from getting inside. For Stephanie, this process was likely familiar. After giving up her phone and personal items, she would have been taken to one of the prison's family visiting units, a much calmer space compared to the prison's main area, which is filled with cell blocks and tall fences. These small apartment-like rooms are basic, but they allow inmates and their spouses to feel like a normal couple for a little while. There's a small kitchen to cook meals, a living space for talking and relaxing, and a bedroom for private time. The program still calls these family visits, but most people know them as conjugal visits. We don't know exactly what happened inside that unit between the time Stephanie arrived and when Brinson made his emergency call at 2 a.m. Did they eat a meal together? Read Bible verses like her son believed? Watch TV or talk about life outside? These details might seem unimportant, if not for what happened next. What we do know is this. Around 2 a.m., David Brinson used the emergency phone in the unit to call prison staff and said his wife had passed out. His voice, according to those familiar with the case, was strangely calm as he asked for help. Officers rushed to the room and found Stephanie unresponsive. Following their training, they started CPR and called for medical help. Paramedics arrived soon after, but despite their efforts, Stephanie Diane Brinson was pronounced dead at 2:51 a.m., less than an hour after Brinson made the call. In the early hours of the morning, with no obvious signs of a struggle, officials believed Stephanie had died from a medical issue. At 62 years old, it seemed possible that she had a heart attack or stroke during the visit. We kind of suspected something weird was going on because she was healthy, her son Armand Torres later said. But at the time, without proof of anything else, Stephanie's body was returned to her family. They began planning her funeral while still in shock from the sudden loss. Her family gathered in Los Angeles, trying to make sense of it. How could a woman who had just posted videos about how healthy she felt suddenly drop dead? They held her funeral, thinking she had passed from natural causes, unexpected, sad, but something that happens in life. Meanwhile, the Amador County Sheriff's Office opened a routine investigation. They worked with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, took statements from prison staff, and questioned Brinson about what had happened before the emergency call. But what came next was even more heartbreaking. In March 2025, 4 months after Stephanie's death, the Amador County coroner released a report that changed everything. Stephanie hadn't just passed out. She hadn't died from a heart problem. The cause of death, strangulation. What had first looked like a natural death was now officially ruled a murder. This news hit her family like a second wave of grief. The woman they had buried months ago wasn't just gone. She had been killed. And the killer was the very man they had warned her about. Now their sadness was mixed with anger, confusion, and deep pain. How could they just, let this happen? Armand Torres asked through tears. My mum was just left alone and she called for help, I'm sure, and there was nothing she could do. After the coroner's report came out, prison officials quickly moved Brinson to another facility in Stockton. He was likely placed in administrative segregation, a special type of solitary confinement used when a prisoner is dangerous or at risk. People began asking, why wasn't Brinson charged right away? The answer lies in how murder cases are handled, especially in prison. Prosecutors need strong evidence, witness statements, and clear forensic proof. Inside a prison, it's hard to gather evidence, especially when the only possible witness is the person accused. Brinson was already serving 4 life sentences with no chance of release. So even if he was charged again, it wouldn't change much about how long he'd stay in prison. Prosecutors had to decide whether using a lot of time and resources on another trial was worth it. After the report, CDCR made a public statement. CDCR family visits are a privilege, and incarcerated persons must apply and meet strict eligibility criteria to be approved. Only those who demonstrate sustained good behavior and meet specific program requirements are considered. These visits are designed to support positive family connections and successful rehabilitation. But for Stephanie's family, these words felt meaningless. What kind of good behavior could ever make it okay for a man who killed 4 people to be alone with a woman? And what kind of rehabilitation is there for someone who will never leave prison? The prison's actions were questioned even more. Why didn't they notice the signs of strangulation sooner? Did they fully check the visiting room for clues? Were there any cameras? And if so, what did they show about what really happened that night? By the time spring 2025 arrived, Stephanie's family found themselves grieving all over again. They had already buried her once, thinking she died from a medical condition. Now they knew the truth. She was murdered, and the funeral they had held felt incomplete. For the prison system, this was a major failure. The program meant to help families and give prisoners a chance to grow had instead created a space for a horrible crime. For the public, it raised serious concerns. Who is allowed conjugal visits and why? But for Stephanie's family, there was only one truth that mattered. The man who had once killed 4 people in 1990 had now taken a 5th life, this time from inside the very prison that was supposed to stop him. By spring 2025, the truth about Stephanie's death had grown from a private family tragedy into a major public controversy. The case reached the top levels of California's prison system. Her case file, now marked clearly as a homicide investigation, passed between county investigators, state prosecutors, and prison oversight officials. Each agency faced tough legal and moral questions about how a murder happened inside a state-run prison. For prison leaders, this was one of the worst outcomes possible. A system meant to offer fair treatment and safety had failed at both. Internal reviews began, looking closely at every step that had allowed David Brinson to qualify for family visits, even though he had a long history of extreme violence. This wasn't just any violent criminal, said a former corrections officer who spoke to the media. Someone who kills people execution style, has clearly planned it and feels no emotion doing it. That should be a major warning sign. The investigation didn't just focus on Brinson, it turned into a wider look at prison policies. At the time, California's rules banned family visits for sex offenders and inmates on death row, but not for people convicted of multiple murders. Now, that seemed less like a thoughtful reform and more like a dangerous mistake. As public anger grew, lawmakers in Sacramento began holding hearings to review family visit policies. Some new ideas included automatically banning anyone convicted of more than one murder, adding more security for visits involving violent offenders, putting emergency alert devices in the rooms, and adding security cameras in shared areas of the visiting units. What happened to Stephanie Dowls Brinson shows a serious problem in how we think about prison, said one justice reform speaker during the hearing. We say some people are too dangerous to ever be released, but then let them have unsupervised private visits. Those two ideas can't both be true. While lawmakers debated policy changes, prosecutors in Amador County faced their own decision. Should they charge Brinson with Stephanie's murder? On paper, it seemed like an easy case. The autopsy confirmed strangulation, but Brinson was already serving 4 life sentences. Would another conviction actually change anything? Some officials wondered if it was worth spending time and resources on a trial when Brinson would never get out anyway. But to Stephanie's family, that thinking missed the point. To them, charging Brinson wasn't just about adding time, it was about finally recognizing the truth. It was about justice. The funeral they had held in November 2024 now felt like it was based on a lie. Stephanie's family said it was like losing her twice, first to what they thought was a medical emergency, then again, when they learned it, was murder. Some family members called for a second memorial service, one that would honor her life with the full truth behind her death. At Har Elite, Stephanie's salon in Los Angeles, staff and clients built a memorial wall. It featured photos of her working at local events, mentoring new stylists, and posing proudly with happy clients. Many pictures were surrounded by handwritten notes, stories of how she had supported, listened to, or lifted up those around her. She wasn't just a hairstylist, one longtime client said. She built something special. People came here to feel better, not just about how they looked, but about who they were. For people working in justice reform, Stephanie's death created a painful conflict. Many had long supported family visit programs as a way to keep prisoners connected to their families, especially for those who would one day be released. But this case showed that applying those rules to everyone, even people serving life for brutal crimes, could be very risky. Prison consultant Justin Paperny explained it this way. Good behavior in prison can earn you privacy, but even a few minutes of privacy can be deadly if someone decides to do harm. As November 2025 approached, the 1-year mark since Stephanie's death, the Amador County District Attorney finally announced their decision. Brinson would be charged with first-degree murder, with added charges because of his past killings. While this wouldn't add time to his already permanent sentence, prosecutors said it was important to hold him accountable. No matter how long someone has already been sentenced, taking another life must still come with consequences, said the district attorney at a press conference. Stephanie Dowls Brinson deserves justice. Her family deserves justice. Brinson had already been moved to a prison in Stockton, where he was kept away from other inmates. All future family visits were permanently banned. The murder charge guaranteed he would remain in maximum security, no matter how CDCR's rules might change later. For Stephanie's 6 grandchildren, who ranged from toddlers to teens, understanding her death was incredibly hard. The youngest didn't know what had happened. They only knew Grandma Stevie wasn't coming back. The older ones had more painful questions. Why would someone hurt her? Why didn't the prison protect her? And how could a man already in prison still be able to do this? Stephanie's family started a college fund in her name to support the grandchildren she loved so much. They also began working with groups that help victims of abuse, creating guides to help others understand the risks of romantic relationships with violent inmates, a topic not often discussed. It was a cruel twist. A woman whose faith in redemption led her to believe in change became the victim of the very kind of violence she thought her husband had left behind. The prison system that was supposed to keep others safe had instead given Brinson the chance to kill again. And the man who had already lost his freedom for taking 4 lives had somehow been trusted enough to take a 5th. California's prison system promised reforms, and reviews were launched. But Stephanie's story was a hard reminder that policy can only do so much. Some people who hurt others deeply may pretend to change, but still hold the same darkness inside. No system, no matter how careful, can fully protect those who trust the wrong person. In the end, Stephanie's story is both personal and important on a larger scale. It's about one woman's choice, a system's failure, and the hard truth about how we try to balance justice, safety, and hope for change. For the people who loved her, though, all of that is small compared to what they lost. A bright life, a beloved mother, and a woman who should still be here.